Hello, this is Matt Hesser with Dimensional Nomad Games, and today we're talking about Magic Adventures in FNM Commander, Episode 2. We were going to be talking about the games that happened on July 21st, 2017 at the LGS Zeus and Apollos in Pocatello, Idaho. This week I decided to play Captain Sisay. You can see the deck list here on the YouTube channel. I also have the link in the description. You can also go to the Tapped Out website. If you're just looking for my profile, it's under Shattered Empires. If you're looking for the deck specifically, it's tappedout.net slash mtg decks slash Sisays legends 29 10 13 1 slash. And that's where you'll find the current iteration of Captain Sisay. Again, I'll have the deck list in the description below. I did do a video about Captain Sisay. It was my first eclectic decks episode. I'll have that link in the description, or it should be on my podcast or on YouTube. I plan on making a different version eventually, but uh, that's the commander I decided to play. I actually made a few changes that day to the deck. Originally, I had an Enchantress theme, but I decided to switch out the Enchantresses for a little bit more mana rocks. The goal was to get Captain Sisay out earlier, guarantee a turn 3 drop. Okay, so let's just go straight into the games. The first game was between Captain Sisay, Sirach Dragonclaw, and Temet Vizier of something I can't see because in my picture I have a bunch of glare, but I'm sure everyone knows who Temet is. Now, this was the first time I've gotten to actually playtest the Captain Sisay, and I have to say I was actually very pleased with it. Now, Temet is a 2 mana, 2 CMC commander. It's a white and a blue. It says at the beginning of combat, on your turn, target creature token you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn and can't be blocked. And it also has Embalm, so while it's in the graveyard, you can exile it to make a token copy of itself. So it can eventually give itself um, unblockable, but usually with that you make a token build. Sirach, Dragonclaw, for a green, blue, and red, you get a 6/6 legendary creature, human warrior with flash. It can't be countered. Your all creature spells you control can't be countered, and other creatures you control have trample. So generally, it's a big creature ramping spell. Unfortunately for him, Surok didn't do much this game. I think he just got mana hosed, or maybe his hand was just too heavy. I don't remember the exact thing, but I know that he didn't do a whole lot. Temet obviously played himself turn 2, and then on my turn 3, I played Thousand Year Elixir. Now, Thousand Year Elixir is an artifact for 3 mana that says you may activate abilities of creatures you control as though those creatures had haste, and pay 1 and untap target creature. Now, with Captain Sisay, that's bonkers because that means turn 3, I played Thousand Year Elixir. Turn 4, I played Captain Sisay and immediately was able to activate her. I went ahead and grabbed Gaia's Cradle so I could have the extra mana, guaranteed that mana drop for turn 5. Turn 5, I dropped an Elvish Piper. Elvish Piper is 3 and a green for a 1/1 creature elf shaman that says pay 1 green, tap, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. With Thousand Year Elixir, that let me go ahead and use it the turn that I played the Piper. So turn 5, I got Captain Sisay. I used Captain Sisay to get the Gaia's Cradle. Turn 5, I played the Elvish Piper, used Captain Sisay to get Avacyn, used the Piper to put Avacyn into play. Suddenly, I've got an indestructible board, very strong board presence. Uh, Temet obviously made a token. I decided to make a token copy of Captain Sisay. I wasn't sure how exactly that was going to help him, but obviously he was sending the damage my way. Unfortunately, it was not going to be enough damage early on, especially with this kind of thing. I have an 8/8 Avacyn. My entire board is indestructible. I've got Elvish Piper, Thousand Year Elixir. The next turn, I went ahead and used Sisay to get both Selvala, Heart of the Wilds, and Paradox Engine. Now, Selvala is for a green, sorry, 1 and 2 green, you get a 2/3 legendary elf scout that says whenever another creature enters the battlefield, its controller may draw a card if its power is greater than each other creature's power. That didn't matter because I already had the biggest creature out. And then even better, for 1 green and tap, you add X mana in any combination of colors to your mana pool, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. Because I had Avacyn, who's an 8/8, for 1 green, I got 8 mana in any combination I wanted. Paradox Engine, on the other hand, so it costs 5 for a legendary artifact that says whenever you cast a spell, untap all non-land permanents you control. So first I played Paradox Engine, then I played Selvala. That let me untap Captain Sisay and my Elvish Piper. I used Sisay to go get another legend. I played another legend. Selvala got me 8 more mana. I tapped to play another card out of my hand. It didn't even matter, but it reset everything. Basically, I got every legendary permanent out of my deck, cast them all. I gave them all haste with the Chroma's Memorial, swung for lethal. That was game one. We decided to play some other just fun games after that. I switched to my Hapatra deck. And that did not do nearly as good. 10 player ended up making 10/10 unblockables. But that's a whole nother game. All right, so moving on to game two, it was Captain Sisay versus Marin of Clan Neltoth and the Scarab God. Now, Marin of Clan Neltoth is 2, a black and a green for a 3/4 legendary creature, human shaman. Whenever another creature you control dies, you get an experience counter. At the beginning of your end step, choose target creature in your graveyard. If it converted mana cost is less than or equal to the number of experience counters you have, return it to the battlefield, otherwise put it into your hand. So at the end of every turn, you're either getting a creature back to your hand or onto the battlefield, depending on the CMC and how many experience counters. So usually a reanimation style deck. Uh, I have Marin in my Savra deck. I plan on switching it out, so I'll build those. Maybe you'll see that on the Eclectic decks one of these days. All right, now the Scarab God is 3, a blue and a black for a 5/5 legendary creature god. He's one of the new gods out of our devastation. And it says at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life, and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. For 2, a blue and a black, exile target creature card from a graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. And then whenever the Scarab God dies, return it to the owner's hand at the beginning of the next side step. Basically, you can I don't remember what eternalize any creature from any graveyard, which basically just turns into a 4/4 zombie version of itself. It's pretty nice because it's any graveyard. You've got the Marin deck, which is a reanimation, so it's always throwing things in the graveyard. Usually you play kill spells so you can get stuff out of my graveyard. It's Captain Sisay. All right, so I thought it was actually off to a pretty good start. I started off with a Felwar Stone, so turn 2, I had a Felwar Stone. Felwar Stone is an artifact for 2 that says tap, add to your mana pool 1 mana of any color that a land and opponent controls could produce. So that's turn 2. Turn 3, I dropped a Vidalcan Ori. Vidalcan Ori is an artifact for 4 mana that says you may cast non-land cards as though they had flash. So it gives my entire board flash. Next turn, I got out Sisay. I used Sisay to get out Sigarda, Heron's Grace. She is for 3, a green and a white. You get a 4/5 legendary creature angel with flying. You and humans you control have hexproof, and 2 exile cards from your graveyard. Put a 1/1 white human soldier creature token on the battlefield. The last ability is pretty much just flavor text to me. The important part is me and my humans had hexproof because Captain Sisay is a human soldier. Both of the decks were playing black. I knew they had a lot of creature hate in it, so I needed to get that protection out there really fast. Unfortunately, soon after playing that, the Scarab God player decided to play Damnation, killed the entire board. So that unfortunately started things going down. Now, I always tell this to players when they're playing against my Captain Sisay deck. The key to managing my Captain Sisay deck is kill Captain Sisay. They really effectively managed to kill Captain Sisay. They killed her at least 6 times in this game. She ended up costing me 14 or 16 the last time I played her, which is crazy. I'll admit, even though I keep telling people to kill Captain Sisay over, I don't actually expect them to be able to do that. So I'll admit I was a little annoyed at it. Although a few times she died was totally my fault. Now, the Marin player, he kept playing Fleshbag Marauder. Now, Fleshbag Marauder is a for 2 and a black, you get a 3/1 creature zombie warrior that says when Fleshbag Marauder enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature. He always seemed to do that right when I only had one creature. Usually, Captain Sisay, there was one time where I did Vorinclex trying to stabilize, and I had forgotten that the turn before the Scarab God player had Cyclonic Rift, which bounced all non-land permanents everyone else controlled back to their hands, which put the Fleshbag Marauder back in his hands. I was like, oh my god, I totally spaced that. So I made a few play mistakes that really stretched out the game. It was still fun because there was a lot of back and forth. I liked that there was a lot of control going. So it didn't feel like anyone was just sitting there doing nothing. My Captain Sisay deck was definitely hamstrung. I really rely on the search ability for Captain Sisay. So having her off the field for most of the game really slowed me down. I was basically in top deck mode the entire time. And then, of course, our Marin player was going crazy because he had Greater Good. Now, Greater Good is an enchantment for 2 and 2 green that says sacrifice a creature, draw cards equal to the sacrificed creature's power, then choose and discard 3 cards. So, with Marin on the field, he can kill one of his creatures, and then at the end of the turn, he just puts it back into play, especially with Fleshbag Marauder or something even more ridiculous like Coco Show, the Evening Star. Coco Show is 4 and 2 black for a 5/5 legendary dragon spirit with flying. And when Coco Show, the Evening Star is put into a graveyard from play, each opponent loses 5 life, and then you gain life equal to the life lost this way. So he was hammering us pretty good. And of course, he's sacking us, getting them all back, and then um, the Scarab God player snuck in the Notion Thief. Now, Notion Thief, for 2, a blue, and a black, is a 3/1 human rogue with flash. So he sneaks it in response to the Greater Good. And it says if an opponent would draw a card, except for the first card he or she draws in each of his or her draw steps, instead, that player skips that draw and you draw a card. So the Scarab God player stole a bunch of the card draws and really helped him stay in the game. Um, However, the Marin player was very good at keeping the board clear between the Fleshbag Marauder, kill spells, and everything like that. He was very good at keeping the board clear. Um, Eventually, though, I was finally able to stabilize. I got out the original Sigarda, which says that I can't be caused to sacrifice creatures from my opponent's abilities. I don't have a picture of it, unfortunately, but she's one of the key things that I usually get in my deck. But I was able to get her out. She's a 5/5 flying. Says I can't sacrifice things. Oh, so I finally stabilized. I wasn't losing creatures over and over, but I was still in a bad position because I didn't have enough power to go anywhere because Coco Show's a 5/5, Cigar is a 5/5. I wasn't going to be attacking into that. Eventually, the Marin player played Machias, which buffed his other creatures. But then I finally got Sakiko, Mother of Summer. So Sakiko, for 4 and 2 green, you get a 3/3 legendary snake shaman that says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, add that much green mana to your mana pool. This mana doesn't cause mana burn, and until the end of your turn, this mana doesn't empty from your mana as phases end. So usually you use so you attack for combat damage, and then if you deal 10 combat damage, you then have 10 green mana to play with. I then got Kamal, Fist of Krosa on the board. So I had Sakiko, Kamal. I had a 3/3 token, and I had Sigarda, and I thought I had another creature. I don't remember actually right now. But then I got Hero's Podium. Now, Hero's Podium is 5 mana for a legendary artifact that says each legendary creature you control gets +1/+1 for each other legendary creature you control. And then pay X, tap, look at the top X cards of your library. You may reveal a legendary creature card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Now, by this time, the game had been going on for a while. We all had a bunch of mana in play. Um, I was looking at the board. The life totals were pretty low. I was down to like 20. The Marin player was still at like 26, and the Scarab God player was at like 16. So I'm looking at the board, I'm looking at my position, and I see that the Marin player has 22 toughness among his 4 creatures. So between 26 life, 22 toughness, he had 48 life available to him. And I'm looking at my board, and I look at the amount of mana I have, and I'm like, I've got enough to overrun twice. So I can give all of my creatures +6/+6 and trample and then trample. So in case he could remove trample somehow, they would still have trample. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, if I swing all out, I can deal 66 damage. He'll absorb 48 of it. So he'll absorb 22 of it. So I still get through with 44 damage. So that's lethal, and then I get 44 green mana to play with. So I swing all out. I I hit him, and fortunately, that was enough to get him out of the play. So I had 44 mana in 44. No, I actually had more than that because he decided to sack and draw to try and get more cards. Unfortunately, because he still had Greater Good, Kokusho, and another creature out, so he sacked the Kokusho trying to Greater Good, but the other player still had a Notion Thief that he had somehow gotten back in his hand. He flashed it in, stole the card draw, so he drew like 12 cards off of this attack. So I'm like, okay, he's got 12 cards in hand. I just killed the player. It's now 1-on-1. He's at 16. I'm at 20. He's got nothing in play, but he's got a bunch of mana. So I'm like, okay, I've got Cabal, I've got a bunch of mana, I've got a Hero's Podium. Let's luck into it. So I do Hero's Podium for 30. So pick up 30 cards out of my library, and I look through them and pick a legendary card. I went and grabbed Elish Norn. Grand Cenobite. Now, Elish Norn is 5 and 2 white for a 4/7 legendary Praetor. It has Vigilance. Other creatures you control get +2/+2, and more importantly, creatures your opponents control get -2, -2. Now, I had enough mana to get him and use Kamal's ability, which is pay 1 green, target land becomes a 1/1 creature until end of turn. So I targeted all of the Scorpion God's black lands, which is like 6 lands, because he had a bunch of dual land types and a couple of swamps. So I killed off all of his black land. And I'm like, okay, if he doesn't draw a board wipe or a global bounce, I'm good. And he draws. He gets another swamp. I'm like, he got his black mana, but he's looking at his hand. He's like, I'm 1 mana short of stopping you. I was like, barely survived that game. So eked out the win. Um, but it was a great game. Lots of back and forth. Yeah, my Sisay died a bunch, which I didn't like, but it's part of the game, and it's what I keep telling people. Kill Captain Sisay, you stop the deck. And for the most part, it did. It was a very lucky instance that let me recover from that game. But it was a great game. I really enjoyed it. All right, now moving on to game 3, it was Captain Sisay, Brea Ethereum Shaper, and Alicia Who Smiles at Death. Now, Brea is white, blue, black, red for a 4/4 legendary artifact human. When Brea Ethereum Shaper enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 Blue Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying. Then pay 2, sacrifice 2 artifacts, choose 1. Brea deals 3 damage to target player. Target creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn, or you gain 5 life. Alicia Who Smiles at Death is 2 and a red for a 3/2 legendary creature human warrior with first strike, and whenever Alicia Who Smiles at Death attacks, you may pay 2 hybrid white-black. If you do, return target creature with power 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. She's a lot of graveyard shenanigans and some really cool colors. So red, white, black gives you some really fun things. Brea, I love Brea. I've got a Brea deck that I hope to talk about one day. But so yeah, so with this game, this was so the board state. I ended up um, being able to ramp out early. So I'm looking at my opening hand, and I see that I've got a aura shards in my hand. So aura shards is an enchantment for one a white and a green. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. I'm looking around. I'm like, oh, that poor Brea player. Oh man. But so that was the early start, and I'm like, well, I don't really want to do that. So I just need to see what the Brea player decides to do. But anyway, so the game started out. I had the Cradle in hand. I had Celestius in it, so I had a really good start. Turn two, I played my Signet. Turn three, I played Captain Sisay. And then turn three, the Alicia player played Aven Mind Sensor right after I played my Captain Sisay. Now, Aven Mind Sensor is 2 and a white for a 2/1 bird wizard with flash and flying that says if an opponent would search a library, that player searches the top 4 cards of their library instead. Now, Captain Sisay, the entire point of the deck is to search my library. So his very first card shuts down my deck completely. I was like, are you kidding me? Oh man. But you know what? With the number of legendaries I've got in the deck, it was still able to keep going on. So I let it go through. It was still fun. I mean, it sucked, but it was still fun. So I used Sisay to look for some things. Um, I was able to get a Paradox engine out super quick out of the top of my deck, so that let me. It enabled me to do a lot more things. I got the Elvish Piper out. I got the newer Selvala. Now she's the one with Parlay. No, she's the older one. She's one a white and a green for a 4/4 that says tap. Each player reveals the top card of their library. For each non-land revealed this way, you add a green mana to your pool and gain a life. So I was able to use that to get a little bit of card advantage. I eventually was able to just eke out. I used Captain Sisay with Aven Mind Sensor out 4 times. I only missed once, so I was able to get a legendary permanent 3 out of the 4 times that I used it, even though I was limited to the top 4 cards. Eventually, the Brea player decided to kill the Aven Mind Sensor. He uses a lot of tutoring effects in his deck, so he knew that that was going to limit him. But as soon as he did that, I knew that I was going to be completely enabled. So he did that. I was able to go get a Chroma's Memorial. I pointed out that with what I had in play, then I got the new Saval, the one that was pay 1 green, tap, add equal to the uh, power of one of my creatures. I pointed out that with my board state, I would be able to go get my entire legendary permanents, put them all into play. A Chroma's Memorial was already in play, and then I'm like, I'll go ahead and take first. You guys can go ahead and battle for second. So the change to the deck definitely worked. Even with an Aven Mind Sensor limiting me, I was able to find enough legends that I could continue to use my engine. The Paradox engine is huge in this deck. For a long time, I hadn't run it, but I decided to add it into the deck, and it worked. The people, like, they're looking at it, they're like, you know what? Even though we lost, it was a fun game, and that's the important part. All the players still did things. I'm still not I'm still choosing to not run things like Iona and Gaddock Teague. I want people to be able to play because I like interactions. But if you don't answer the deck will cascade out. So it was a lot of fun. I had a great time. I really enjoyed it. Um, I always stick around and play some other games. I always bring around 20 different commander decks with me. And Zeus and Apollos are a great group. I've been coming there for about a month and a half now since I moved to Pocatello from Portland. So yeah, I had a great time. Thankful for everyone who was there, and I would also like to thank everyone who's taking the time to watch my videos and listen. If you enjoy it, go ahead and subscribe. Please leave a comment. Let me know how I can improve my podcasts and my videos. I want to know what content you guys actually want to hear, how I can make these better. I'm trying to get more pictures of the games, including more talk about the decks. Had a lot more pictures this time than I did in my first episode, so I hope that works out better for everyone. Um, Again, if you liked it, check me out. I'll have the links to iTunes, SoundCloud, where you can get the podcasts, my YouTube channel. So, and if you're looking for me, just look for Dimensional Nomad Games on either iTunes, SoundCloud, or YouTube. Thanks again, and I hope you have a great time playing Magic.